morning. Good morning. Please be seated. It's a joy to be back with all of you. Even with a rough gospel. I think this is sort of a rough gospel today. Difficult to hear and comprehend, I think, and incorporate into our lives. To start, let's try to set it in context. Jesus was before this gospel, was just identified by Peter as the Messiah. And just after this gospel reading is the transfiguration, which we heard 2 weeks ago. This out of order sequence is confusing sometimes, perhaps. I'm not in charge of the lectionary. But today, Peter's confused. He's thinking, but you're the Messiah. I just said it. And how can you now tell me you're going to be killed and disrespected? How can you say these terrible things? To set this even more in context, we're in Galilee, where this story is taking place. And historically, Galilee was the epicenter of insurrectionists against Rome. About 20 years prior to this event in the gospel, Rome went into Galilee and crucified approximately 2,500 people, putting them up along the roadway. As an example of this is what happens to insurrectionists and anyone who tried to take the bodies down or add up onto the next crosses. They were brutal. They were brutal. And this would have been burned into the minds and the memories of those Galileans present with Jesus that day, and certainly what was remembered and known by Peter. And I think that memory influenced Peter's reaction. Notice that Jesus scolds Peter quickly, and then focuses on the disciples, and then turns to the entire crowd, saying difficult things for them to hear, and I think for us to hear. Deny yourself. Take up your individual cross and follow. You save and lose lives by doing this. Forfeiting life because of worldly things and cares. These are, I think, challenging times. Richard Rohr famously about the 3 Ps, and it's not the 3 Peters. It's prestige, power, and possessions. Prestige, power, possessions. Jesus' concerns for us and to those he was speaking to in today's gospel can be summarized by those 3 words. 95% of Jesus' statements in the Gospels are about needed corrective action by humankind around these 3 words: prestige, power, possessions, and how those 3 words can move us away from what Jesus describes as the life we are to lead as his disciples. And in this gospel, the cross is at the center of the account. It's hovering there. Jesus is saying that the cross is proof that our God is meant to be different than all those other small g gods that are around. That include prestige, power, and possessions. This focus on death and injury is unusual, isn't it? And it's meant to set apart our God from all those other gods. God's majesty is not based in power, as Peter was believing the Messiah would be powerful. But God's majesty is in perceived weakness. The cross, Jesus is taking something shameful. Think about those 2,500 deaths in Galilee, and making it into something else entirely. And the cross is at the center of this account. Many symbols point to that which they represent. And Paul Tillich, there's a little word puzzle coming right now. Paul Tillich loves to do word puzzles. But points out that this cross, which is at the center of today's account, quote, is not only a symbol that points beyond itself, but actually participates in the reality to which it points, unquote. In other words, it points to the reality of the saving love of God for all humanity. Another way to think about this gospel is that it is asking us this question: what is at the center of our lives? We should not focus on self, which can lead to a false sense of security about life. But what is at the center of our lives? I'm stressing the center here on purpose, because we are at the center of Mark's gospel today. We're at the end of chapter 8, and there's 16 chapters in Mark. And at the center of this gospel is the central message of Mark's gospel. We are called to be on a journey of faith by taking up our cross and following Jesus. Now, what the heck does that mean? What does it mean to give up our lives for Christ and the gospel, and those lives will be saved? At the center of our lives, what is important? In Gareth and Linnet, Tennyson wrote a story of a young man who had a vision that he should join King Arthur's circle of knights, to which his mother strenuously objected. She pulls out all the arguments from her arsenal to try to quell her son's desire to do this. Bribery, promising to arrange hunts and sports and a bride, saying he's too young to do this. She even throws in a little guilt. You're going to leave me alone. All of these being good reasons to try to keep her son from doing something she perceived as a harmful choice. But her son replies, "Oh, mother, how can you keep me tethered to you? Shame. Man am I grown, a man's work must I do. Follow the deer, follow the Christ, the King. Live pure, speak true, right, wrong, follow the King. Else what for was I born?" Tennyson had a way of doing poetry that was kind of fun. Anyway, Tennyson's story is meant to evoke questions in us, 3 of which are: in what do we believe? In what do we have faith? What is at the center of our life? I think Tennyson modeled the mother on this story of Peter. I really think Peter influenced Tennyson, where Peter wanted and believed in his own definition and understanding of what Messiah means. And Jesus, very much like the son in Tennyson's tale, is following a path that he knows is right, is the correct one he invites us to, asking us to deny ourselves, take up our individual cross and follow him. You know, Jesus is not talking about self-hatred here, or our Lenten penchant to give things up. Jesus is asking us to focus on what is really important in life. Jesus took up his individual cross and changed the world by carrying that individual cross to its conclusion. And we are asked to pick up our cross and to change the world. Jesus' cross gave us redemption and love that is just beyond measure. What is our cross? That picking that up, dropping those things that are truly unimportant. And how can we then change the world? In what do we believe and what do we have faith? What is at the center of our lives? Our Hebrew Testament reading of God's renaming of Abraham and Sarah from Abram and Sarai is all about faith and faithful living. At 100, do you want a kid? Really? Really? Anyway, it's all about faithful living. Paul, in the portion of the letter to the Romans we hear, defines Abraham's reward as being based on the righteousness of his faith, not Abraham's adherence to the law. And what did Abraham believe? And what did he have faith? What was the center of Abraham's life? It seems to me that taking up the cross, giving up our lives, is all done through the acts of sacrificial love of and for others. It may sound trite, but I really do believe that in giving, we receive more. We are being asked by Jesus to give up our lives sacrificially to acts of love, compassion, justice, and peace, I believe. Those four things are really the sum and summary of Jesus' teachings. Sacrificially giving up our lives to acts of love, compassion, justice, and peace. Following ourselves alone can lead to a false sense of security about life and mislead us to deciding what is important in life. Peter's response to Jesus' outrageous statement is due to his narrow understanding of power and self. In Peter's mind, the Roman Empire was unconquerable. From our place in time, we can ask how many empires before and after were thought of the same way. What are the perceived unconquerable empires today that will be seen differently from the ash heap of history? What is the center of our lives? What is lasting? Jesus is asking. By taking up our cross and following Jesus, Jesus is instructing us to think about what is integral to our lives, what is truly lasting. I think this idea of sacrificial love, making the cares and concerns of others primary to our focus in life, this kind of sacrificial love can be transformative. And it is acts of love and compassion and seeking justice and peace for others that I believe needs to be our center, needs to be the center. And as an offshoot of that centeredness, we then get to stand up to bigotry and inequality and hatred and dislike of those who are different and a refusal to change. These five things are never an acceptable theological position. We are called to act in love and compassion to all people, treating all the same and standing against intolerance wherever it raises its unsacramental head. Our cross needs to be our center, a center focused on a selfless, sacrificial life based in love and compassion for all, seeking justice and peace for all. And truly, this is a Lenten transformational gospel message today, and one to which we are called upon to practice, strive, and keep trying to embody and make real. And it's a lifetime's work. Amen. We believe in one God,